What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to DoloresCannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Lee Sumpter, who is the author of We Are Creators. Now, when Lee was a sophomore in high school, Lee first read Ignatius Donnelly's book on Atlantis. This was the beginning of a lifelong interest in maverick history and science. Now, these studies reached a doctoral level and have been done in 8 universities on 2 continents and in 4 Western languages. Now, his interest has not diminished through more than 35 years of teaching in elementary, secondary and higher education settings. Lee has also worked for many years in engineering and sales. He has lived and travelled in 48 of the 50 United States and in 10 foreign countries. He has taught, written articles for publication and presented papers in 2 languages. Now finally, after retiring from teaching, it has been possible for him to devote full-time study to writing about unorthodox topics. Lee Sumpter, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to address the ancestors of my ancestors.
Yes. And, we were just talking off air there because obviously, I say this sometimes at the beginning of my interviews because I'm doing so many right now. I chuck myself in the deep end and think, it'll be easy just to, research that, on the same day. And of course, the day comes, things happen, and you're not that prepared. But then I found out at the last minute, this is channeled information. So it was like, oh my God, right up my alley. There's a reason for this coming to me. This is going to be really enjoyable. Okay, well, this is based, what's on the screen right now, this is based on the book We Are the Creators. Great title, by the way. Lee, just to begin with, just tell us a bit about yourself, because I understand that as a sophomore in high school, you were influenced by a book on Atlantis. Is that where it started for you?
Wow. Things started about then, yes, being aware, although, see, I had experiences with deja vu from before that, and it terrified me. And I began to cope with the terror by analyzing what was going on. It took me a long time to sort it out. I never did tell anyone about it. So I'd had those kinds of psychic experiences, although I didn't know it. That's what they were. And yes, indeed, I did read the book on Atlantis. What's his name? It's a classic. Really, no one has researched it as well as he did. And then I even at that time had a neighbor who loaned me a bunch of books on flying saucers, which I think was pretentious, but at the time, of course, I just thought it was fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. So just before we move forward a bit, with the deja vu, then, what was this deja? You knew things were going to happen. You'd already seen them happening in your mind, in a sense, and they happened.
Well, a deja vu experience typically is rather complex. There's a visual, but in many cases, with some people with some experiences, it'll knock the air right out of your lungs. It's like being punched in the stomach. It's so powerful. In the early days, when I was younger, though, that was not uncommon. So yes, I would indeed experience things where I had a strong sensation that I had seen it somewhere before. The time came when I not only was I aware that I'd seen it before, I could remember when I had seen it. So even those 10 years that I had a vision or a dream, when I saw that, I knew very precisely when I saw that. And that helped me with my analysis.
Absolutely. And what was your childhood like? What were your parents like? Were they spiritual, religious, or neither?
Pretty much military. No, there was none of this in the family. And as I said, I didn't tell anyone. I never shared it. I sort of thought everybody had it, but we didn't share anything in my family.
Right. Okay. So no sort of imaginary friends when growing up?
No, but I was aware of a kind of guardian angel at one point. Very, very difficult time in my life. One of the very difficult times in my life. And I was aware of somebody that was helping me, but it was, in order to write this book, I had to struggle against my classical education, which is extensive. And I did. I had to. I mentioned that in the introduction. There was a big battle going on. I refused to write a lot of things that I was being things that were being explained to me, and so then I would leave the keyboard and go out, and then this long lecture would begin, and various things around me, like for instance, if I was driving down the road, then examples would be pulled from the scenery and such to explain what it was that they were trying to get me to write. After a week or so, well, I would give in, and I would go with it. And that, you see, was my education as well. I had to be trained to do this.
God,
I had other training before that.
Yeah. No, there's so much we've got to talk about here. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, your background, was many years in engineering and sales. So that's a very different background to this metaphysical kind of work that you're in now. When going through your normal career, in a sense, were messages coming to you? What was it like? Had you actually shut this part of you off, or was it still there in some sort of guise?
Well, I'm actually a retired teacher. You'll see that from the email I sent you. Many, 35 years of teaching languages, and I speak 4 languages. So really, and then I have practically a PhD in comparative literature, French, German, English literature. So I have a lot of education, a lot of formal education, a lot of history, and I'm a student. I just always study. The engineering was more of a, how shall I say, an application of whatever I could learn about mathematics, so that I got to have a kind of a spiritual understanding of mathematics rather than just, what you put on paper. Or nowadays, you put it in the computer.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that, yeah. So you even when doing the teaching as well, and that's a really credible background that you've got. I really do like that, and that will resonate with a lot of people. I think the right people will be drawn to you with that credible background. It'll be seen as
Okay, well, yeah, let me add this, Kevin. Okay, the time came in my teaching when the faces of my students would just, like, if I was waking up early in the morning or going to bed half awake, half asleep, sitting down, sort of daydreaming, and the faces of my students and my colleagues would all flow across my mind's eye. And for hundreds and hundreds, and I got the idea these students were meant to be in my classes, and I was, we were meant to be there at that time. And I got to be, I got to have a very, very deep, how can I say, sense of the importance of our little time together. I mean, for an hour a day, for 5 days a week, for semester, etc. But I saw that it was meant to be, the teaching that was supposed to go on. Now that didn't mean I was a real pushover as a teacher or anything like that, but I had a great deal of respect for what was going on. And the language class, I learned finally, was a medium by which other kinds of spiritual teaching were going on, let me say, in another plane.
Wow. Okay. Something that's just come to me as well is that, with having all these languages in your back pocket, in a sense, that may open up doors to take your teachings to easily into other countries. And I suppose that's a gift that you've got there as well, and that's maybe why this ability has come through so strong as well.
Well, yes. I was meant to do the teaching. Whenever I tried to go do something else, things just got bad. But then the how can I say, the channeling really started toward the end of the career. And although I was taught automatic writing as a consequence of just really an effort to get in contact with the other side for help, because I was again in another crisis. And I practiced the automatic writing off and on for several years. But after I retired from teaching, then all of this sort of went together. And that's when I found out that I was going to write a book. I thought I was just writing essays, but turned out that it was a book. And then actually, I've got the second book right here beside me on the desk.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, it was Neale Donald Walsch, Conversations with God. His material was through, what was the automatic writing as well. Very interesting. Very interesting. What? How much trust was there? When you started to use automatic writing to bring through this communication that you was having, how much resistance was on your part at the time?
Oh, well, the resistance was that I had to understand the universe entirely. If I'm a Western person, and I accepted the Newtonian version of physics, and I pretty much I resisted the idea of what do I say, evolution as a monolithic theory. I just don't believe in monolithic theories. Things are too complex for that. But I did have very much of a classical education. And I had, as an engineer, and what little bit of it I did, I had a lot of faith in rational thought, you know. So there was a struggle. But they told me when they were teaching me to write, they were teaching me automatic writing, they said in a few years, they said your eyesight will sharpen up, your hearing will improve, and they said you will not recognize yourself. And sure enough, within a few years, that's what came to pass. And I want to stir the pot, if you don't mind, because you know England was one of the places where this global warming thing really took off, and there are many. I mean, it's an article of faith, you know, both on both sides of the pond. But they told me, but you have, you know, a meteorologist in England that's based all of his predictions on on solar phenomena, and he says you guys are nuts. You know, it ain't going to happen, as we say here. It's going to cool. Well, they told me about 20 years ago when they were teaching me automatic writing and other things. They said things are going to cool down. That there will be colder and rainier many years, not every year, and that crops will fail because it'll be too cold and wet in the spring and in the fall, and crops like wheat, for instance, will not be able to grow where it has been because it'll be too cold and wet. And I'm afraid to tell you, Kevin, but they said that England will be subject to a lot of flooding, as you have been a witness to for the last 3, 4, 5 years.
Oh yeah. You know, even this year the flooding was really bad. I mean, you won't hear about it on American news, you know, but over here it was really bad and worse. I think it's one of the worst years it's been for decades and decades. You know, they spent millions on flood defenses and they all failed. So I can validate what you're saying.
Now I want to tell you all, Brits, I keep up with your lot. Okay, so I'm aware of what all kinds of things you guys go through.
Absolutely.
And I know quite well that you have had this, and you had more snow. You had a lot of snow and rather cold weather.
Well, yeah, the snow's the previous years the snow's been bad, but yeah, absolutely. But okay, so they told you that. Now, how has your family received your work and your peers as well? Have they been quite receptive, or has it been? Well, you tell us how it's been.
Well, now let's see. My family, my immediate family is, they've almost all passed on, pretty much, and we never got along well enough to communicate. However, my wife was totally with me all along. She has been a great assistance. And when I would go fuming and fussing and saying, that's crazy, people will think I'm nuts, I'm not going to write that, she would encourage me. She is a healing touch practitioner, excellent healing touch practitioner, and a Reiki master. And it turns out that she had lots of cousins who are also extremely psychic. And we've been sort of teaching each other and progressing along. So, you know, I've sort of fallen in with a psychic family by the grace of God, and that's kind of the way it works.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm so glad that your wife's been there, and I bet you are, and I bet she's seen this amazing journey that you've both been on in a sense. Okay, so now this group or this, who are you? Who do you think you're channeling, and what's their backstory, if any?
Okay, now I hope that people don't take me to be too presumptive, but I do have one guide that is a person that I trade off with. So, in some lives, he guides me, in other lives, I guide him. You know, even when we are living our life currently, we often are somebody else's guide. That's a possibility. But anyway, I have one guide, and he is 9 feet tall. He's an Atlantean. He wears robes. But I don't know why, but that he does. And he is the one that I've had recourse to, but there's like 6 or 7 of the immediate guides, and then there is a new guide that came in. I described that in the introduction to the book. This guide is from Lemuria, the last time, or last anyway. That's the way it was described to me. And now this is an example of the conflict between rational European Western thought and just spiritual stuff. Some people will laugh at this, but this guy came in, and I didn't know. I was a flash. I saw her, and I didn't know what to make of it. Anyway, I asked some of my psychic friends, and they said, well, it's a new guy that's brought in to help you write this book. And she was the one that helped, particularly with the phenomenology. And she said, so I said at some point, she showed me her town on the coast, and it looked like it was in the Middle East. So I said to somebody, one of my other psychic friends, I said, it looks like that this guy is from the Middle East. And I got this message, no, I'm from a place that's neither middle nor east, and from about 500,000 years ago. It took me more than a year to figure out what she was talking about. Now, see, that's what I mean. Finally, it occurred to me as I was slowly led to understand that where she was from, I got something about the latitude too. She was from Lemuria, and it was from about a 500,000 years ago. And then subsequently, and this shows up in the second book, I was shown what you would probably call minutes and minutes and minutes of tape. I'm just making scenery, visions of what it was like in Lemuria at that time. You have to understand, if you have a continent that lasts 1,000,000 years, there are many, many, many experiences there. And if the continent breaks up into islands, then there's experiences on the islands. Same thing goes for Atlantis. To say you had an experience, a life in Atlantis, it doesn't, it's like what experience when, and just like you could say you had an experience in Cardiff. Well, what part of Cardiff did you live in, and that's quite different from somebody who lived on the other side of town. So anyway, it caught on to me that she was indeed from Atlantis, and then the information started flowing in and has been flowing in ever since. And that's narrated out in the book. There are also, however, Kevin, a number of layers. I have layers of sources. Recently, I've had a different voice that's been, shall I say, dictating. Many of the times the voice is a composite, not always, but it is. But now there's other layers. As I get further and further out, try to explain things, then I have help from other higher up, you could say, if you want. We understand it that way. That's not necessarily accurate, but I get help from many layers of information, and I love that. I'm very appreciative, frankly. I really am. And anybody can do this if they'll just let it go and open themselves up. The messages are floating around in their breast, in their heart, in their mind all the time, but they're rejecting them.
Yes, and you're not looking, nor is your guys looking to be a guru. It's about giving information back and re-empowering people that they have the gift as well.
Precisely, absolutely. Why, you're saying my words. Yes, I have a mission, sir. I do.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Since I'm retired, I was glad to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when this information comes to you now, is it a voice in and if it is, what side of your head is it on, or is it just is it downloads? How's it working?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I've anticipated this question for weeks, and can I say? I guess you could say. Well, do you hear voices, Lee? Well, yeah, but actually, there's something called audio clairaudience.
Yes.
Where you actually hear a voice spoken, and that's what you would call a voice in your ear. And I have that as well. I have sudden realizations, which is more something like you feel in your heart. There's a thing where you just feel like you know something. And there also are things that are given. Now, this is a really important thing here. Even some of these things that I'm writing, they're scientific. They really are a history, a lot of things. And lo and behold, I will begin working on the internet, I'll pick up a newspaper. I still do read newspapers. We still have them here in Florida, um, and there will be some kind of a site or article which corroborates what I just was told, what I just learned. I have come, at first it was shocking, but now I've come to kind of look for these things.
Okay.
So it's not like what I'm learning is so alien. There are other people pursuing similar things, they just don't know it. Like the God particle that's going on over there in Switzerland, that kind of thing. I wrote about that in this book, and I wrote about it many years before, several years before they went after, or he got in the headlines anyway. That amazed me that was happening. And I bring back in the phenomenology discussions. I can't say I bring it back, but it was brought back, this ether concept. Now in the particularly 1900s, this is a concept that's come and gone. It's seen as a way. For instance, how does light move through space? And people will say, well, there must be a medium, and that medium is the ether. And then in a few years, it'll be rejected. And that's something that has come and gone. Now, recently, there's been more discussion of things like an ether. It's coming back, But it turns out that, in fact, there is something like an ether that, in fact, what we might call space is quite dense. And there's a tremendous amount of information flying about. Now, in the second book, I have a chapter that's called The Great Ball of Twine, because around the Earth life, are spheres, in a sense, of influence. That's a nice term. That's a little political term. Spheres of influence, because there are a lot of different things going on in the Earth life. You are in a, as I'm saying this, you're already getting it. It's coming into your, I can see it coming to you as I am speaking it. Not because of this audio stuff. Okay, so anyway, there are layers and layers and layers of responsibility. And as we live our lives, we actually participate in these lives, in this level of management of the earth experience. We participate we live our earth life on many layers. When our physical life on the earth is over and we pass on, then our life in these spheres of information continues. It goes on. How can I say, well, we retire from Earth, but our careers in management of electromagnetism, I don't know, gravity, these are just silly things that I'm throwing out, but there are spiritual versions of those things. And that career goes on. We're doing a whole lot more than we give ourselves credit for. And that's what this program is about right here. It's for us, I don't know how to say, those of us that are channeling or anybody, to make known to people that this is going on, that this is there.
Absolutely, and we've all got this gift, and the way that you've said that you communicate that the information comes to you is just the same as myself, so I can really validate that, and that's quite incredible actually. And it's only recently for me that it's my voice, but it's in my ear, it's and then I'm dictating, but it's such an honest and pure, and it's me, but it's different. It's very wise and it's very loving.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, I could use at some points when doing the channeling, I'm as fluent as this, so it's almost like the voice has become me, and I've not tried to do that. But then when I go out of alignment with it, and I think I'm blocking it or I'm losing it, it goes back to just the audio, then and then I repeat what it's saying, and then it goes back into alignment maybe after doing it for a while. So that's interesting.
But after it's all said and done, Kevin, you step back and you say, I didn't know that.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes you have to be honest. Yeah. Well, and sometimes, you some things do come through that you've heard already, and you're thinking, well, is that me
Yeah.
making that up? But then you have to go with it and say, no, maybe that's just truth. Anyway, that's just truth, or the truth of the channel. Now,
Precisely.
one thing, and I'll say this in many interviews, one thing my channel always tells me is that there is many truths. It's not just one truth, there's many truths. And this truth that
Precisely,
you're bringing
yes.
through and I bring through is just the truth as it is. And if it feels right, go with it. If it doesn't, well, you can use bits of it, that's fine, but go with it and make up your own truth, and be your own discovery on the path as well. And I know that's hard for some people, because they're like, well, there must be only one ultimate truth and I need to live by that. Well, no, it doesn't seem to be like that. No, not quite that true.
No.
That's the hard
No.
part of this sometimes.
And there is so much truth that we can't deal with it and live our life. That's discussed in the book as well. I said that, you've heard this analogy. This analogy is used in a lot of ways. We're like actors on a stage, and our life is our role in the play. And when the play is over, we step out, but you can't get out onto a stage and do King Lear at the same time that in your family you're having an argument with your mother-in-law. It's just too much. You can't focus on being King Lear. And so we have to know what we have to know to focus on our the very, well, I call it in my writing, I call it the gestalt. We have to have it's a moral moment. That's what we're here for. And we have to be able to focus on our moral responsibility to know God, to improve ourselves, to do the best for everybody, help everybody, love everybody, etc. We have to do the best we can in that moment, and we make choices. And that brings in the next moment. And that's changing constantly. And if we mess up, well, guess what? You're going to get another chance. You'll get another one, and you can't be focusing on this truth over here, this truth over there, or you'll miss your moment.
Yes, create your own. Absolutely. And I think what you're saying as well is, is one way I might say it as well, is that what would love do in the moment now?
What would love do in the moment now? Precisely. Exactly. Yes. That's your focus, and that keeps you going. And that also puts you on a channel for more information. Hey, this one gets it, pour it in,
Yeah.
And that is actually that's what goes on. We don't realize that we are evaluated. We are being evaluated. And in fact, there's a lot more supervision of our experience in our lives than we realize. There's a lot more supervision of what happens within cultures and what happens within nations and within the whole earth. I mean, one of the things that was pointed out to me is the earth itself has a life plan. We have individually life plans. Our neighborhood has one. If you want to call it, nation has one. The earth has a life plan, and the solar system, universe, everything's on a plan. And there are various organizations in the spiritual world that supervise these things. Now that gets to be a pretty wild, controversial thing, because people will say, how can they possibly allow some of these things to happen? And there's an answer to that question, but we don't have time for it on this show. In fact, there's several long answers to that question. Maybe that'll be another whole book.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, could you sum it up in a couple of words?
Yes, I can. I'm going to sum it up in a couple of words, and I'm going to be grateful for the help I'm going to have in doing that. There is, okay, whoops, I'm getting some static here. The things that are indeed allowed are things, they're not exactly what we think they are. We don't see them that way. And people are living out what we would call a karmic moment, and certain propositions as to what is true are being acted out to make it obvious what the consequences are. We are in an age where beliefs are being bashed. We're here, a lot of things that are going on in our world, I call it bashing beliefs. Okay, you've had these beliefs, just like I do in my book. I talk about this in my book, to treat women like they're secondary. I mean, this is how we come into this life, and then we turn on them, for crying out loud. What kind of insanity is this? So just that idea alone is poison. It is poison for our culture. After all, you've got 50% of your culture you're denying, their existence. Well, and of course, you can expect, you keep this up, the doors for your interests are going to get shut. Well, anyway, that idea has to be bashed, and it's being bashed, and it's bashed for all to see. All to see, except those that profit from it, and they of course won't see it.
No, not unless they, unless it's their time, or unless they choose to, or unless when they get back home. And
in the corner, they'll see it.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, God, this is so interesting, and I know we're time is just ticking away here so quickly. Well, we're going to get more into the teachings. Just one thing, just going back to the channel that I need to ask you. As I said off air, I've gone through a paradigm shift this past week, or past couple of weeks, where, I had someone come to me to tell me that perhaps I'm channeling my higher self, and in the end I came to realize that potentially that's what this is. And when I went back into channel, it told me that it would never tell me that that's what I was doing, but if that's what my truth is now, then that's what it is. And actually, to get to that point is quite empowering, because what it's saying is, then you realize that actually, rather than saying it's something else, and by saying it's you, that takes on the responsibility of the God source in a sense, and which we can all have that responsibility. So my question to you is, do you think that potentially, and it's more about the message. I mean, I do know that, but just this question: do you think you're potentially channeling your past lives in a sense, which is your highest?
It's true, because in past lives I have been a spiritual guide. I've been a priest. I've been told, somebody saw me one time in some kind of fancy headgear, which had to do with being a priest. I've been a spiritual advisor, let's call it that, in a general word. I've also been an airplane mechanic, so somebody saw me at one time with my son flying and working on airplanes in the Appalachian region of the United States, because that eastern seaboard was at once part of Atlantis. But Kevin, you got to understand who you are. You got to see who you are and what you're doing, just like what you're doing with your program. And you've got to see that you wouldn't be doing that unless you were privy to a higher access to knowledge. And so it's only you're calling it your higher self. You better believe it's a higher self. Okay. It is a divine and great self that is extremely knowledgeable. And when you say, thank you, Lord, and open yourself to this, just open yourself to it. Wow, man, you got to watch what's going to happen. Sorry, but that's a message. I just gave you a message.
Yes, you did. Yes, yeah, and
you just got to see yourself as an opening, as a spokesperson, as a mouthpiece, and just let it be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's nice to be, it's so great to be able to speak to someone like yourself, and who's got the same gift, and which we all have. It's not, but who's using that gift now, and to look at these questions, because I think we I've always probably left the higher self as not being as empowered as it could be, and actually it is. It's the ism, it's the I am, it's the everything. It really is, and so not to get too lost in that in this interview, but just to put that over to you, and just to sort of truck that out there, and like you that message you gave me there, I'm very grateful for.
Okay, but Kevin, you're using some terminology that's from German, Kant, Leibniz, and when I say Husserl, some of this stuff is only approximate. This was an attempt to understand the difference between our inner consciousness and that world out there. There is no difference. Our inner consciousness, and there is no world out there. It's all us, all of it. We live in our own bubble, which we create. Now, this is kind of crazy. And the bubbles overlap. It's like Venn diagrams. Venn diagrams. I'm sorry, not Zen. Well, Zen, sure, that's like. But it's a Venn diagram. These bubbles overlap. We have shared consciousness, like in your neighborhood. But we create our reality, and we are in it. Now, that's described quite succinctly in the book. It's sort of like we're on the edge of the bubble, and what's out there, we look out at it. If you want, and I tell people this, you can actually pull your consciousness back out from the top of your head, out into space, so to speak, and you can see yourself sitting there with your created life in front of you. You can see that. The terms that you're using are old. And I suggest, I encourage you to pitch them out and let your guides explain to you exactly how things connect and how you get this information. And, you know, if they do, I appreciate it if you send me an email or something and tell me what you found out.
Okay, I will do. Absolutely. I've been told that through my channeling that we are entering in. I'm going to enter into a new paradigm of channeling where, you know, by coming from the higher self. But what that means right now, I don't know. But I've got a rough idea. But then again, I could be completely wrong. So anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what it means. You are of a generation that has much more spiritual responsibility, and when you arrived, you had much more spiritual potentiality than those of us that are before, you know, have come ahead of you. You are part of the new age. You probably are one of those blue children, or purple, or, you know, what is the violet? No,
indigo.
Indigo. You're probably one of those indigos. And so once again, this is a matter of accepting that. Just accept it. Go with it, be at ease with it, and I just had a deja vu. I have previously seen myself explaining this in these words to someone like you. Well, how about, I see that's a kind of a confirmation. Okay, you are where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do. But you undoubtedly are one of these, and so you have tremendous abilities, and you just need to let it be. And at times it will be shocking, but you have to let that be too. Believe me, you will have plenty of help. You are having plenty of help and support from all of these, the spiritual realm that surrounds you. And all of us do, if we'll, sort of the image, I'm getting this image of, you know, they do that trust thing where you fall back in someone's arms. They're showing me fall back in the arms of that world because they want to help us make a better world. We have a future to make here, and they want us to help.
That's what I get told all the time. And I remember when I first connected with them, the first thing they told me is, you know, you're going to have a spiritual TV network. You're going to have a spiritual TV channel, and that's the aim of this, to bring that channel will bring like-minded people together. And I've only just embraced that.
Well, then.
Yeah, yeah. I've only just really gone with that in my mind over the past few days after a year ago of channeling that. And I've these past few days have really been an aha moment for me, where I've said to myself, you know what? I think this is my calling. I think this is what I've got to do. I think this is where my passion is, to do this. And it's gone more to a spiritual news channel right now. Spiritual news channel. And a psychic channel as well. So yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. But anyway, and this is the great thing with people. I'll say this to the audience as well, is that, you know, when you let yourself experiment with channeling, all answers are there. You know, if you're looking for an answer for which way to go in life, it's all there if you just let it in. Whether it comes through a dream, or whether it comes through an intuitive feeling, or it comes through a clairaudience.
Somebody will walk up and talk to you.
Yes.
You know, the other people around you, if you refuse to listen to yourself, they'll send somebody to tell you all this stuff.
Yeah, or you're gonna go through a test, because if you refuse to listen and you don't go with that intuitive feeling, yeah, guess what? You know, there will be not a price to pay, but it's just automatic. It's automatic that then you're going to go down a different path, which is fine. All paths are fine, but it might be a little bit heavier compared to what it would have been if you'd listened to, not being told what to do, but just that mark in the road to say, well, look, there is these other options. Yeah, but
you've got to feel the love. Now, I apologize, Kevin, because you're not interviewing me now. You're interviewing my guides. But the last chapter in the book, there's two appendices. One is a meditation, guided meditation on that takes a person to heaven. Now, heaven is not exclusive or inaccessible. And in this meditation, you really can go to heaven. Now, I confess I was a little skeptical at first, but I have done the meditation as a workshop, and it does work, and you do go there. And you can go anytime you want. And one of the things that you experience when you follow the meditation is this unconditional love that it's like a vibration coming through your chest. It's warm, it fills you with warmth, and you can take it anywhere and you can feel it anytime you want, anytime. Another appendix is an essay that I wrote to establish that there is no hell. I love this.
Very important.
It's called Hell No. I'm sorry.
No, that's great.
Anyway, but it does get into what we have learned from near-death experiences, from psychics, psychic readers, people who've written all of these kinds of books. We have a great deal of spiritual knowledge, and we have people traipsing around in heaven looking for somebody's relative that they're supposed to be reading, and they never found anybody in hell. You've never heard anybody go to a psychic and have the psychic say, I can't talk to your grandmother, she's in hell. I can't get access to her. This is it. There isn't any hell. Now we can make some hells. We got hells on earth right now here. We can definitely create our own hell. We are very good at that. But as far as the heaven, there's heaven and there's no hell.
Very interesting, yes, and I hear that from so many people. I mean, there's been a few. That Howard Storm, I interviewed him not too long ago, and he feels that he went to hell, and then when he called out to Jesus, Jesus took him out of hell and took him to heaven. My conflict at that time in that interview with him was, well, did you create this experience? And he was in absolute denial of it. I got absolutely bashed to hell from people online for the interview that I gave him, from the Christians. I don't mind, that's fine. You're going to put yourself out there, that's fine. You're going to get that. But I really do feel that his message, as beautiful as it is in most parts, that, I don't feel that I think he created that reality of hell, because that's where that's the level he felt at.
We create what we believe. We create what we believe. And unfortunately, we take our beliefs with us over to heaven. And then we go on working on them there. This belief thing, a belief is a magic thing. And they say, in heaven, they say ideas are things. And that's a really big, now you want to talk about European philosophy, that's a big thing. Ideas are things. But there was this, I can't think of his first name. His name is Monroe, and he wrote several books about out-of-body experiences.
Robert.
There's a Monroe Institute in the Eastern Seaboard in the United States. Well, he, at first, when he would do his out-of-bodies, when he would project himself out into another world, he would go through a stage of blackness and where he seemed to be struggling with demons for quite some time. And he described fighting with them and wrestling with them. And so he assumed that he had to go kind of through hell. But he wrote that later he realized that he did that because that's what he expected. He had put that hell belt between him, you got the earth if you want, and then you've got the hell belt, and then you've got the heaven belt. And he had put that there. And he said later when he would go to, Monroe was not a terribly religious person, and he didn't have much background or experience in these things. And so he was at pains to explain. Fortunately, I did have a lot of background in literature and Romanticism, etc. So I've been told I was chosen because I could talk about it better. Once they could get through to me. But anyway, he was creating all of that himself because that's what his belief system provided. And once he quit, he rejected that. He dumped it. He went straight to his other, parallel lives is really what he went to. And he did go to heaven and talk to people there who were, in heaven, like a medium would do. He did do that. And so he did not pass through that anymore. So indeed, if you want a hell, you will have one. Absolutely. Here, I'm going to tell you a story, and I knew I was going to. I hope it doesn't take very long.
Sure.
But I had a relative who died of cancer several years ago. He had a beautiful garden beside his house. He spent a lot of money at it, and it was on the sidewalk on one of the main streets. And people would come when he sat in his garden. People would come, including the governor of the state, and sit with him in benches in his garden and talk to him. Everybody loved him. They wrote him up in the paper. Everybody loved him in his garden. Now, when he died, he said to me, he came to me, of course, he said, let me show you something. So he took me, he had recreated his house. And beside the house and in the front, he had his garden. Now, I was there in his house during 4 different seasons. I mean, 4 seasons of the year at various times. And he had on the side of his house where the electric meter went. Now, I don't know if you have those in England, but we used to have electric meters. And he would go to this where the meter was, and he had a great knob there. He would turn it, and when he turned the knob, his garden would be the spring garden or the summer garden or the fall garden or the winter. He could change his garden to whatever season he wanted. It was wonderful. It was delightful. Well, he did that for a little while because he had just passed over, and he those are his memories, and that comforted him. And little by little, he helped me. He has helped me. He does help me with my writing. And he went on to other things. But see, there you have a belief system, if you want. And it's not, belief can be like, I want a transition here. I want a stage. I want comfort. I want to see what I can do. And so that's what he did.
Absolutely, completely agreed there as well, and just bringing this, from belief back into the abilities that we have as well, because you do talk about in the book that we have power and abilities far beyond what we're consciously aware of, and I think that's an important, empowering part of your work as well.
Indeed. In fact, that's why the book was written, is it's a new time and a new age. I explain in the first part of the book that right there in England around 1800, they were putting steam engines on wooden rails to work around the factory, for factory work. In only 60 years after that was in 1803 approximately, in 60 years, the Transcontinental Railroad across the United States was finished, and people could go across the United States within weeks. We went from that railroad transportation, 1800, to rockets on the moon in less than 200 years. Less than 200 years. Now, I describe this in the book. The pioneers of the continent were going from the coast to Kentucky, what's now Kentucky, at about, I've got here the 1774, thereabouts. There's a recreation of a fort
right
there. And I've got in 195 years after 1774, that is 1969, we had somebody on the moon. The ancestors of those people on horseback and on foot, as people had always moved about for 10,000 years, or we don't know how many thousands of years. They suddenly, in less than 200 years, we have put people on the moon. So there is something going on here, folks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you look at technology and you look at, just even to be able to do this video interview right now, and just, yeah, it's just absolutely. Sorry, Lee.
I say we've overcome time and space.
Yes, we have. It truly is game changing. Just how much technology is changing, and how we can use that technology to really bring us all together and spread messages and really broadcast to the world information that we are doing right now and that everyone else is doing in this field as well, to really bring a new paradigm to people and to help people remember who they truly are. Now, obviously, I know we're almost at the end of this interview, and you know, there's some really great chapters in this book of lost information and teachings. It's a teaching book, basically, in a sense. But what would you say is maybe your most important message from this book to the audience?
The most important message is to realize that we have beliefs that are holding us back. And these are really, beliefs are very subtle, and we have to work on these things. And we have to be aware that we are much, much more capable of spiritual tasks than we have been taught. And this teaching is all around us, in the air, in our religions, in our education, in our family relations, you know, people walking around talking to us that don't accept us for all that we are. But we must begin an active exercise to learn who we are and expand. The universe needs for this to happen, and it's on us. It's our responsibility.
Absolutely. And what we're going to do for your website, we've been linking up on the screen the website, your profile, your author profile on Ozark Mountain Publishing. So that's there. But for people to get in contact with you, we've been putting up your email address on the screen as well. So if you can just give us your email address, just in case people are listening back to this on an audio version.
All right, then. I'm told that this will be okay. It's called The P Fort, THEPFORT, at hotmail.com.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, so it's like Fort Sumter, but it has a P in it. See, The P Fort.
Well, Lee, blessings to you, and I shall speak to you in the not too distant future. But thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you, Kevin.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.